on air.
How are you, buddy?
Mate, how are you going calling at the Tokyo Olympics, mate? You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, mate. It's been terrific. It's been obviously it's been a different Olympics from all the others, but it's been. I think it's been a great fill-up, hasn't it, for everyone watching at home? To be people stuck in lockdown. And this time round, of course, the timeline's good. You know, there's only an hour difference between Tokyo and the east coast of Australia, so people are watching great events at a time when they don't have to get up in the middle of the night. So it's been, there's been some amazing things, hasn't there? That boy cheering home the Aussie and screaming at him in the 1500 at the decathlon the other night, you know, to just get him over the line, to get him into that bronze medal. It's just beautiful.
It sure was. Now, Jon Harker, you're affectionately known as Harks. You're best known through your work with Channel 9, where you commentated on many big fight nights involving Jeff Fennick, Joe Bugner, the Waters brothers. Lately, John has been commentating the boxing at the Japanese at the Tokyo Olympics. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Tell us how your love for boxing come along, mate.
Well, mate, probably a lot like yours. I'm a little bit older than you, but if you grew up...
Thanks, mate.
In the 70s, I don't look as good in the neutral corner fight promotion t-shirts, mate. But if you grew up in the 70s and you therefore grew up watching, you know, Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Norton, that glorious era of heavyweights, and you know, obviously Ali transcended sport, but then straight after that comes along, and by the time I started getting into the media and getting involved a bit in boxing, you know, came the great middleweights. You know, Sugar Ray, Duran, Hearns, Hagler. You know, it was just an amazing period of boxing, and we were lucky at Seven and I was particularly lucky because Rex I started off with Rex, and then
Rex
got a massive offer to go to Channel 10, and it sort of left a gap there in terms of people at the station with an interest in boxing, and so I got to work with Gus Mercurio and others calling some great fights, and you know, you just rattle off some names there. And Joe, you know, to just, you know, rub his shoulders with Joe, someone that had been the distance with both Ali and Frazier. You know, like, he's an incredibly underrated boxer, Joe Buck.
He sure was, wasn't he?
Oh, mate, and a terrific bloke, as you know. Yeah. Just like Fennick, the Waters boys, you know, there were some great nights. I remember, and the other thing about boxing in that era, the world's a little different, and there were some incredible characters, you know, your Jeff Malcolms and those sorts of people. But at the top of the list was Bill Morty, you know, the promoter's promoter. But I remember one night at the West Point Casino, the three Waters brothers were due to fight the next night. I went out to Morty. It's one thing for Kerry Packer to be a big gambler, you know, when he's got plenty. But Morty was someone that would bet his last. I've gone out to dinner. I reckon Morty was $32,000 in front playing baccarat, and said, "See you, you know, break open, Bill, do your best." When I came back 3 or 4 hours later, we'd had a reasonable feed and a few drinks. So I came back. Bill was trying to snip anyone he could find, because not only had he lost the 30-odd he was in front, but he'd lost the fighter's persons that he was going to pay him with the next day. But of course, as Bill being Bill, he found a way to make good. All the fighters got paid. You know,
unbelievable.
He was a terrific bloke, and just an amazing character. So they were great days for Aussie boxing.
Out of all them fights you commentated, Jeff Fennick, Joe Bugner, the Waters brothers, Lester Ellis, any of those big nights stayed in your memory? You look back and say, wow, I was glad to be a part of that?
Oh, yeah, a few of them, but
Jeff Harding as well.
For me, Jeff Harding. I was hosting that back here. I didn't call that fight, but what a fight that was. But the one that stays in my mind is, for me, was Pike Aroon. A couple of reasons. It was his second world title, as you know. And earlier that night, I was calling with talking about characters. Gus Mercurio, what a wonderful bloke he was. You know, former Marine. He was a professional fighter. His dad had been a fighter. Of course, he then went on to be an actor and all of that. You know, he just 3 or 4 years earlier had been in The Man from Snowy River, and Gus and I, we liked the look of this young fella, Troy Waters. Troy Waters was fighting a bloke named Dwayne Lockman. this American former Golden Gloves boy they brought out, and we unloaded on Troy to beat Lockman by knockout, which he promptly did, and then loaded everything back into Fenwick to beat Paya Karoon. And when Morty went backstage to collect after it was all over, and we're all celebrating. It was one of the great moments, and an absolutely masterclass at Fenwick. He was so good that night. The Thais refused to pay and actually pulled a gun on him. It was bizarre days. But and of course, Paya Karoon, then went into hiding for a while. He ended up. He was in the mountains of Thailand with the monks and stuff. There was all sorts of drama. But Fenwick that night, and for a long while, he was just, he was just supreme, wasn't he? And look, there's no doubt that he won that fight in Vegas. He should have been a 4-time world champion. Would never have had to fight him again. He was harshly treated. We've just seen a young boy win an Olympic bronze. And of course, Fenwick got ripped off in the quarterfinals in '84, and then he beat the gold medalist. Was Steve McCrory, wasn't it? Steve McCrory. Came back out here. I think you were at that night too.
I was there. I was at the quarter fight too.
There, and he's we call that fight. There was there was a lot of good fights, but the Paya Karoon one in particular. Apart from it was a classic night on the puncher. We didn't get our money, but it was just such a masterclass of Jeff. It was so good that night.
Mate, talking about gold medals, you want to talk about Harry Garside now, mate? You commentated that fight.
Yeah, I did.
I'll just give a summary from the assistant coach, Mark Wilson. Let's see, you commentated it, mate. What a great effort he put up, eh? We haven't won a medal for 33 years, and we've done it.
And that's right. And we'd only won 5. But I think people listening to this show, because lots of the boxing community listen to your show, Paul, they know and they understand. But 5 medals in the history of Olympic boxing for Australia, 5. It is exceptionally difficult to win. The Cubans, they're either full-time professional athletes without actually being paid professional fighters, or they're in the army, which is code for you're a full-time professional fighter. That's why we've seen Savon and Stevenson and those guys go on to win, 3 Olympic gold medals and things like that. The bloke that beat him, he is pound for pound the best amateur boxer in the world. Yeah. And his record going into that fight, since 2015, he's lost 174.
Wow.
And as you know, in amateur boxing, that's an extraordinary thing to achieve.
Sure is.
I thought Harry did everything that was asked of him.
Yeah.
He tried to sort of outfox him and fight Cruz the way Cruz fights by feinting and trying to trick him in and then countering. And when that didn't work, he did what Aussies do, and he put his head on his chest and said, "Okay, we're going to turn this into a fight to phone box," and he got beaten there as well. But geez, he showed so much ticker, so much bravery. He tried everything he possibly could. The other guy was too good. But he on the way to get there, he beat the world number 2. He beat a terrific Kazakhstani as well. Again, you beat one of the Kazakhs. They're all. He had 90 fights, the Kazakhs, and about 75 of those were international fights. Harry's only had 32 fights all up, and about 12 of his are international fights. It's the golfing experience and the battle through COVID. You can't put nights on. It's the same things happen here for all of our blokes when they're trying to get ready. I think what he achieved was magnificent, and I think he's the second best fighter in that division. Yeah. He was horribly unlucky to come up against Cruz in the semis. Cruz will beat the American. Did you see that fight? By the way, did you see the fight before? Mark wouldn't have.
I didn't see it. I was just hell-bent on watching Harry.
Yeah, well, the fight before.
I watched a bit of it. I've seen the end of it actually. Come to think of it.
Yeah, it was scrappy, and they were throwing. The refereeing was appalling. They were throwing punches after the referee had told them to stop, and it's 3 and 4, and he was not doing anything about it. But seriously, there is a moment when the referee calls on them to stop, and the American actually pushes the referee with his gloves out of the road to get back into it. It was bizarre.
Do you get
How he wasn't disqualified. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. But anyway, but Cruz will beat him. Cruz will beat Davis, and so young Harry has lost to the bloke who will be the ultimate gold medalist. So I thought he was magnificent. But, how did you see it when you were watching?
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more, mate. I thought he was magnificent. I spoke to a couple of, fighters, ex-fighters, like Joe Vella that's coming on next. I spoke to him yesterday. He goes, I don't know why, and it's true, I don't know why these guys have got to hold their hands by their side. And, that's just the...
It's the way he fights, and he relies on head movement and footwork. But if you're fighting someone that's faster than you, whose hands are faster than you, whose footwork's better than you, it's going to get you into trouble. But it was too late to change that mid-fight. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. But also he's trying to fake the guy, and he's trying to counterpunch. It's the way he fights. I thought he was brave, but he just didn't have the ammunition to beat.
There was something about Harry I kept saying all the way through this, But can you imagine, and I don't know if I should say, can you imagine if the league and the ABA could amalgamate and all the other little amateur bodies, we'd go very, very close to winning a gold medal, mate, wouldn't we?
Oh, of course we would. Of course, and it's high time that everyone put the pettiness to one side and just supported boxing. And everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants boxing to be well run and well supported. We want cards that where fights are well matched, and we want to get rid of some of the nonsense. You've got, mate. Look at what happened at your last show. That was your last show, wasn't it? With all the drama with the blue book up there.
Oh yeah. Happens every show.
That sort of stuff. You'll lose people that come to support boxers if that keeps happening. There's got to be a way in this day and age for that stuff not to happen. Mate, and some of the boxers have got to get back to the boxers too. But right now, I just hope we can get out of this COVID business and get back to having some shows.
Yeah, one of the fathers rang me up and said, "This is ridiculous, Paul. My son, he come up green on the internet that he's passed, but he didn't get his blue book." And mate, all I could say was, "Don't associate me with the CSA, please. I'm doing my best to get these fights on." I said, you can hear the frustration, but.
Oh, mate, it's ridiculous. And they've worked their butts off to get there,
Yeah,
they don't care. I'm not sorry, too. I'd say the other thing about lockdown. Melbourne went into a snap lockdown 2 days ago. Brian Levy, who you know, who's Harry's home coach, his trainer, a bloke who fought Famo back in the day. I think he fought Famo early 60s. It was one of Famo's, it was probably his second or third fight from memory. Not that I was there, but I have looked it up in the past. But he went the distance with Famo. He's a terrific bloke. He's 79 years of age. And Harry's mum and dad were going to pick him up to take him down to the local club where 100 people were going to get together in a function room to watch the fight. Yeah. Of course, lockdown comes, and I mean, I know it's compared to people on ventilators in hospitals. It's small potatoes, but it was sad that Brian was watching that fight yesterday, in his lounge room alone. It was sad.
It sure is, isn't it? Okay, I've got to say before we move on, every ex-fighter and every present fighter, Australian, were hoping Harry would have won that fight. Every single one of them. If you weren't, there's something up with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, your love for boxing came through your Sports World program on Sunday mornings, where you had many boxers on. Any inside stories you can share with us?
Oh, gee, we had a few, didn't we?
Quite a few.
We had, and I think probably because of Joe. We also, when Joe was trying to get himself, and he eventually did fight at Wembley against Frank Bruno, World Title qualifier, would have led him to fight Tyson, which of course Bruno went on to fight Tyson at the time. But he was people like David Bay and Greg Page and others came out here and fought at the entertainment centre against Joe. And I remember one day, Page, and I thought it was at first. I thought this is Stu. Page is just doing this. So we had Page on and Bugner on, and Page has got up and blown up and he's walked out. And I'm thinking, this is just a bit of theatre. It's just he's not really up. But mate, he was as filthy as any human being you've ever seen. He was like, he went off like a firecracker. Yeah. So there's every now and again you see those and you think, that's just for show. They're just trying to promote the fight. But he went into that fight as angry as a man could be, and got beat, of course, which was even better. But they were good days, mate. We were very lucky to, and we had people like Lester and of course I've got a Barry Michael. Those fights out of Melbourne at the time too. There was some good fights right around the country, weren't there? We went down to South Australia to call Lester and the people that would be at those fights in those days, like anybody who was anybody would be at those fights. So real A-list events and the fight fans, like people like John Swan and Jimmy Barnes, massive fight fans, and they'd be front row, and so there were a lot of good times had for a young bloke from Sydney's western suburbs, just getting out and enjoying himself, and I tell you, they were good times.
Okay, one of my favourite things about the Olympic boxing is watching a boxer who you believe has huge potential and watching them develop as a pro. Muhammad Ali came through to 60 Olympics, Sugar Ray Leonard through to 1976 Olympics, Jeff Fennick the 84 Olympics. Who do you think could be a star from what you've seen through these current Tokyo Olympics, John? Seen any Cruz, probably?
I think Cruz, absolutely. And I think the other one, the heavy La Cruz, Julio La Cruz, but they're both Cubans, so that the chances of them getting on the professional circuit and doing something and potentially winning a professional world title is so limited, because why would you put yourself through that when you can live like a king and stay amateur? That's a shame, I reckon. In the past, you'd remember Klitschko, of course, beat the Tongan Wolfgram back in. I think from memory, Barry Michael and I called that fight. I think the Tongan carried a hand injury into that fight from memory. But so Klitschko, obviously I remember from '96, but I called the last time Mayweather lost. Mayweather, of course, lost to.
Wow, you've called some big names, John.
Yeah, Todorov, the Bulgarian, beat him in the semis, and was offered a professional contract by Bob Arum, and knocked it back, and then later he tried to turn pro, and a whole bunch of drama. He's now unemployed and living on social benefits in Bulgaria. He's a sad story, Todorov, but because the last man to beat Money Mayweather.
Yeah, geez. So your background covers the first multi-sports event in 1982 at the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah, I was young then. I was just a kid.
You still are, John?
Yeah, I was, mate. It was a long time ago, the 82 Commonwealth Games, but they were great.
You've done
those poolside.
Yeah, you've done a stack of games. Bloody hell.
I've been lucky, mate. I've done a lot. A stack of games. I've done these ones. I was calling water polo, which is another sport I love. I called the swimming trials before these games. So I've done it. Yeah, I've been really lucky. It was a different games this time round. All of the commentary team is Australia-based. Only the interviewers are over there because of COVID and all the drama. So we've all called off screens back here in Australia. And so when you watch people like McAvaney and Dave Colbert and those people call the way they call in events with multiple people, they're just so gifted, those blokes. So to do that off a screen is pretty amazing.
You're not far off it, mate. So you have.
I know about that, Paul.
So you've called Klitschko, Mayweather at the Atlantic Games, Daniel Gill, Paul Miller, Justin Crawford, when they've all won in Manchester. You called all their fights as well. Wow.
Yeah, we won. Yeah, Sugar Cane, Gilly, and Paul Magic Miller. All won that, and of course, Gill went on to be a world champion. I think Paul Miller, a tremendously underrated fighter. I actually think, had Paul Miller, things been a little different for him, but had he fought a Commonwealth Games prior to the Sydney Olympics, I reckon he gets a medal. I think he was at Sydney, he just wasn't quite there, and then of course he went to Manchester, won there, and did turn pro at 7 unbeaten pro fights. A very, very good fighter, Paul Miller, and terrific bloke. Called with him when Harry Garside won at the Commonwealth Games in 2018. And the other bloke that I've been really lucky to call with is Jimmy Watt. I don't know whether you remember Jimmy, but Jimmy held the world title in 79 as a lightweight after Duran was getting bigger and went up. He held the world title for about seven or eight defences. And anyway, he's a local Glasgow boy, and he's, Jimmy's into his 80s now. But calling with him in 2014, mate, was just a pleasure, and what a great bloke. Just a tremendous character, and everywhere we went, people would stop him, wanting to get selfies and stuff with him, and he would greet each person like they were the first person that's ever done it. He was like it made his day. He was just a terrific bloke. I've been lucky enough to work with Lennox as well. I've worked with some some pretty good people, mate. Pretty big names, but mate, we shouldn't look out of our own backyard though. Like Fenix, as good as I know he's a mate of yours, and he is as good as anybody. He is a cherry on the top superstar of world boxing, Jeff Fenix. And I think there's no doubt he's Australia's greatest boxer. I know we've had plenty of good ones, but we've had some good people come through in the last 30 years here in Australia as well, and he's on top.
We sure have. Okay, You've called the swim and the boxing. What do you love calling the best, John? Anything? Just happy to be calling sport?
Oh, mate, to be perfectly honest, I love boxing more than ever. I do. I love it. I love boxers. They're mostly good blokes, as you know yourself, and they work hard.
We're all
they
good blokes,
spar hard, and mate, the respect that they show each other. That's the thing I like about boxing. The respect they show each other after the fight's over is fantastic, and you make lifelong mates through boxing in a way that I don't think you necessarily can. I know all sports you make great mates, but I think there's something very special about boxing, and I think it's partly the brutality of the sport itself, and the fact that you should respect everybody that steps into the ring.
When you punch on with somebody for 10 rounds, 12 rounds,
yeah,
and you see each other in the future, there's nothing more you can do and just shake hands and probably have a beer with them, And
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm waiting to promote, Fiat Nasari 3.
Stop it. Okay, as soon as you're bringing up boxing, folk, listeners out there, Jon Harker not only commentates, you've had a couple of Masters amateur bouts too, haven't you, buddy?
Yeah, almost everybody I fought beat me, though.
I love your honesty. How many have you had, John? Yeah, regular for punishment.
Yeah, no, I only had 5. I had 4, and then I trained for a long while, and I love sparring with the boys. But at Paulie Anderson's gym there at Glovebox, I loved it. But
Paul trains hard, does he?
Yeah, I mean, he does train hard, so I now help out with him and the boys down there a bit, as you know, and help corner the boys. But I suffered a neck injury, so I can't get clearance. So I'm done. Unfortunately, they won't give me medical clearance to fight him.
He's over and done with already.
Already. They hardly got off the ground. The only time they lifted my arm up was when I getting up off the floor.
I'll stop it. I'm sure I've seen you win 1 or 2, mate.
Yeah. Well, so...
Come on, we're on radio now. I've got to talk you up, John.
Every now and again you'll find somebody you can beat. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But no,
good on you.
And I love the sport. And I'd like to be calling for as long as I can. So I'd like to be in Paris. I'd like to be in Birmingham next year. And,
you will.
And I love the amateurs too. To be honest, I'm not saying I don't like pro fights. I love them as well. But there's something special about the amateurs, and I personally I'd like to see the pros stay out of the Olympics. Yeah. I don't think they belong there.
They don't. 110%. What are professional athletes doing at an Olympics? Anyway, don't start me on that.
The Olympics should be the pinnacle of your sport. The boxing is the pinnacle of amateur boxing. But I don't know what the tennis players are doing there. I don't know what the golfers are doing there. But that's the personal view. But if you're a swimmer, you go to the Olympics. If you're a runner, you go to the Olympics. And I love the fact that once every 4 years we're watching hockey. How often do you watch hockey?
Yeah,
you're watching sports like that where these great athletes are doing their best and they're doing their best against the best in the world. Do we need to see football players when they're limited to under 23s and stuff like that? I don't understand why. Don't understand why they're there. Other than money. Other than the IOC selling TV rights. But anyway.
You took the words out of my mouth. Okay, there's a picture there of you with Jeff Horn and Paul Miller you sent me, and I think you're commentating at the Commonwealth Games in the Gold Coast, and Harry Garside was a fighter in that picture that you sent me.
Yeah, he was. They were good games, weren't they? And Paulie Miller said, Jeff came along and did the last couple of days with us. He did the medal fights and did a good job too. And I thought Paul Miller was a terrific commentator. He's got a good eye. He really can analyse a fight. And yeah, Garside won. I think that day Caitlin Parker won as well. I think Sky Nicholson might have won the day before, but they were good games for us, weren't they? The Tom games in 2018, and hopefully they will be again in Birmingham. I'd like to see Harry stay amateur. I'd like to see Harry go to Paris and come back with a gold medal. I reckon he can. Yeah, I think he will. Who knows? What have you heard? Mate, I think he will. I think he will. But look, there'll be people offering him. There was no doubt there'll be promoters and managers trying to get him to change his mind. But I think he will. I think he'll stay amateur. I think his family. I get the sense too. I spoke to his mum a couple of days ago. I think his family would probably like to see him stay amateur. But he's a 24, about to be 25-year-old young man. He's a plumber. He's got to earn a quid. The money might be hard to resist, but gee, I imagine living the rest of your life as an Olympic gold medal. So it'd be pretty hard to resist. And someone like Tony Madigan went to 3 Olympic games, and as we know, Ford Ali and in 1960, and got that bronze medal. He lived a great life as a triple Olympian without putting himself through what can be a pretty tough life as a professional boxer. I hope Harry stays amateur at least for 1 more games. Well, Neutral Corner's been trying to ring him, and I can't get through. We can't get through, mate. The phones are blocked. John, see mate used to boo at Bankstown, mate. What do you think will happen? Will you be back? Surely it's more likely that an open air venue like there will be back before the indoor venues, do you think? Well, that's what I'm hanging on. I've got the 18th of September at the Bankstown Paceway, and I'm hanging on that. I'll just keep promoting it. There's no use in cancelling it now. Nothing's been said, but it's not looking good. But, mate, all we do is just put it back a week or two, then just keep putting it back. Exactly what happened last year. It worries me for the trials for the amateurs should be on late this year to qualify to go to Birmingham. You wonder how this delay is going to affect youngsters that have been watching Harry and they're thinking, gee, I go all right at 63 kilos, or I go all right at 69 kilos. I think I'm going to have a crack at that. And we've got a couple of boys in our gym I'd love to see have a crack at the Commonwealth Games. We've got a couple of very good young fighters that I would love to see represent Australia. But you wonder, the gyms are all closed. They've got to keep themselves fit in their backyards and stuff. It's a big ask for how it's going to impact Australia going into Birmingham. It's only less than a year away now. It makes you wonder, isn't it, how they're going to do this? But absolutely. But look, John, before we go, I had to bring this up because there's a lot of comments when I had the Jon Harker coming on the show. Someone's put there, and I know this guy, don't forget to mention the nappy sand ads. Oh, mate, back with A. That was the lowest ads in the history of the world. Well, I won't say anymore. The lowest ads over 10. They were terrible, but I saw plenty of nappy sand, mate. Did you? Could you share one of them on Facebook again? I dare you to. I'll try and find one. Yeah? I'll try and find one and I'll throw it up for you. Well, Jon Harker, thank you so much for coming on the radio this morning, mate, for your time out. Great to talk to you, mate. Anytime, buddy. Thanks a lot, John. See you, mate. Bye for now. And that was Jon Harker,